A very interesting question they had asked about CT scan of nose and paranasal sinuses. So I have already told you how important it is to know the CT scans of nose and paranasal sinus. What they had asked is, they had marked an area in the CT scan and they had asked whether it is anterior ethmoidal cell, posterior ethmoidal cell, cabriform plate, or what else. So already we had discussed it in our class that the anterior ethmoidal air cells are divided from the posterior ethmoidal air cells by a structure that is called basal lamella, right? Basal lamella or ground lamella. So what is this basal lamella or ground lamella? This basal lamella or ground lamella is a part of middle turbinate. So if you remember, your middle turbinate had three parts, right? Which we had remembered by a mnemonic called SCH, sagittal, coronal, and horizontal, right? So it middle turbinate is like this, sagittal, then it moves like this, coronal, and then it becomes horizontal. So sagittal is attached to the cabriform plate, horizontal is attached to the lateral wall, that is your lamina papyracea, and the horizontal is to the palatine bone. So sagittal, coronal, and horizontal. So this coronal part is called ground lamella or the basal lamella. So if you insert the endoscope, you will see the sagittal part of the middle turbinate. Then if you remove the bulla, you will see the coronal part, that is your ground lamella, which is separating the anterior, whichever cells of ethmoid is anterior to the basal lamella is your anterior ethmoidal cell. इसके पीछे जो होगा, whichever is posterior is your posterior ethmoidal cell. So if this is your nose, like from here you are inserting endoscope. So if you are inserting endoscope and this middle turbinate is curving like this, so whatever will be here is your anterior ethmoidal cell, whatever here will be posterior ethmoidal cell, and this is your basal lamella, right? So if you see more here, you can see this is your, so इसके आगे is anterior, इसके पीछे is posterior. Again, if you see in this, which is a sagittal cut, if you see, this is your anterior ethmoidal cell, these are your posterior ethmoidal cell, and the middle is your basal lamella. You see basal lamella, right? So basal lamella is separating the anterior from the posterior. और एक चीज क्या याद कर सकते हैं? Anterior ethmoidal air cells are more in number and smaller in size, right? So अगर आप देखो, anterior ethmoidal cells are small and they are more in number, while posterior ethmoidal air cells are less in number and bigger in size. So just to make you know the differences I told you, again here you can see your anterior and posterior, and one important thing that they had asked in one of your previous year exam is this aganesi cell. So aganesi cell might be present, might not be present. Actually, if it is pneumatized, then you would be able to see it. So what is this? This is the most anterior ethmoid air cell. And what is the most constant? Anybody? Most constant anterior ethmoidal cell? Most constant anterior ethmoidal cell is your bulla ethmoidalis, right? But most anterior is your aganesi, right? This aganesi cell is there in relation with the facial recess. क्या होता है कि अगर aganesi pneumatized है, बहुत बड़ा है, तो ये frontal, not facial, frontal recess. So ये frontal recess को narrow कर देता है. So to open the frontal sinus, you have to remove this aganesi. Just this is something extra which I wanted to tell you, that aganesi is related to frontal sinus. Talking about hilar cell, any cell which is related with the orbital floor is another variation of ethmoidal air cell, that is called hilar cell. So just remember, orbital floor, if it is related, this is hilar cell, and if it is related to the optic nerve, it will be Onidi cell. So these two cells are again important for your coming NEET PG. That's why I discussed, if it is related to optic nerve, it will be Onidi cell. If it is related to orbital floor, so this is your orbit, right? And if you see, this is your orbital floor. This is your maxillary sinus. So what is the importance of hilar cell? Hilar cell is closing the drainage of maxillary sinus. That is why it is important to open this hilar cell and maintain the maxillary sinus drainage. This is your maxillary sinus, right? So this is your maxillary sinus. So hilar cell. Now how Onidi cell will look like? Onidi cell is related to optic nerve. कैसे याद करोगे? Onidi and optic nerve. O for O, right? Onidi for O. Onidi and optic nerve. Onidi cell कहाँ होता है? हिलार सेल तो ऑर्बिटल फ्लोर पे था. Onidi cell कहाँ होता है? Which is related to the optic nerve. Onidi cell रहता है sphenoid sinus के रिलेशन में. कहाँ? Sphenoid sinus के posterior superiorly. So अगर ये sphenoid sinus है CT scan में, so this is your Onidi cell. अगर ये sphenoid sinus है, so this is your Onidi cell, right? और सबसे easy होता है Onidi cell को identify करना is अगर if there is any horizontal septation in the sphenoid sinus. So अगर ये तुम्हारा sphenoid sinus है, मानो like if this is your sphenoid sinus, so if there is any horizontal septation like this, then you would say that your onity cell is present. This vertical septation is always there. This is intersphenoidal septum. But if there is any horizontal septation like this, you will say that onity cell is there. And why it is important to know onity cell? Onity cell का importance क्या है? Because ये optic nerve से related है, right? Optic nerve से relation का मतलब, if you are doing functional endoscopic sinus surgery and if you by mistake injure this optic nerve, you will be sued medico-legally. They can sue you medico-legally. So you have to prevent optic nerve injury. That is why you have to know whether onity cell is present or not. Here also, if you see, this is your onity cell that is there. This is your onity cell that is there in relation to the optic nerve. This is your sphenoid sinus. Now, एक और क्वेश्चन जान लो sphenoid sinus के रिलेशन में जो पूछा गया था, that is your Vedian canal and foramen rotundum. So again, this is your sphenoid sinus. Like ये आपका sphenoid sinus है, यहाँ पे आपका ऑप्टिक कैनाल है, यहाँ पे आपका कैरोटिड आर्टरी का बल्ज है, इंटरनल कैरोटिड आर्टरी का, और नीचे अगर फ्लोर पे देखो, so you will observe two holes like this. So जो बाहर की तरफ होगा laterally will be Vedian canal और जो अंदर की तरफ होगा will be foramen rotundum. So if this is your sphenoid sinus, जो outer की side होगा will be your Vedian canal and here will be your foramen rotundum, right? So this image has been taught and already asked in your one of the exam.